My parents adopted me when I was 6 weeks old. From birth, I was placed into foster care with a foster family here in Louisville. My parents had been married for 12 years when they adopted me, and they adopted me through a local Christian agency that was here in town. They had been on the waiting list with their agency for 7 years at that point, so they had waited a long time to start their family. The best thing, as far as my experience in being adopted, was all in the way that my parents handled it as I was growing up. And I think that plays a huge part in how I view adoption today. My parents always made it just a normal part of who we were as a family. They always made it just as normal as the fact that I have brown eyes and brown hair. It was never a big deal, but it was just the way that God created our family. When I was almost 5 years old, we adopted my sister. We got her when she was 9 days old. And up until I was in high school, we didn't know any other kids that were adopted. So it was always just the two of us to share that experience together. Growing up, you did have questions about being adopted. I have always thought about it every year on my birthday, just wondering where my birth parents are, how they're doing, what their life ended up being like. Are they thinking of me and what happened in my life? But it's never been something that has bothered me. It's always just been a time to reflect on how God made me into the person that I am today. And in those terms, I could not be more blessed or grateful for the path that He chose in my life by making me adopted. If I hadn't been adopted, I would not have had the family that I have. I probably would not have met my husband Brian, and therefore we would not have the two boys that we have today. I wouldn't have the friends that I have, the job that I have. I wouldn't have this church family that means so much to me. So that's why adoption has played a huge part in being how my life was formed. And so even now, if somebody says to me, well, where's your real mom and dad? I always say my real mom and dad are the people who raised me. I can tell you exactly where they are. They're my family. So looking at family in that terms, real versus biological, your real family are the people that God put in your life to raise you, to give you your value system. My parents raised me in a Christian home, and I could not be more thankful for that, because that value has now been able to be passed on to my kids. So that's who your real parents are when you're adopted. I have led a pretty charmed life, and it all started with when I was born. God crafted my story to say, this child is going to be adopted by this family. She's going to grow up and go to college and get married to a wonderful guy and have two beautiful boys and have a wonderful job that she loves and a church that she loves just as much. So with every adoption story, just like all of our stories, God crafts every bit of it. He was in control from the very beginning. And I think about just what that means for each of us when we're adopted into God's family as Christians. And that's been the illustration that I've been able to use with our boys when explaining to them about what it means for me to be adopted, but also what that means for me to be adopted as a Christian into God's family, and that how hopefully one day we're praying that they'll make that same decision for themselves to be adopted into God's family. If you feel like you're being called to grow your family through adoption, pray about it, talk to other families who have experienced it, find an agency that you trust, because that makes all the difference. And if God chooses to grow your family through adoption, He will work out all of the kinks and make sure that that happens.